My daughter posted on Facebook, "Finally, the freeloader is gone." Then I did something she never expected. The day my daughter announced to the entire internet that the freeloader was finally gone, I was standing in my driveway holding the last box from my own house. Over 1,000 people liked her post. They laughed. They agreed. They chose her side without asking a single question. What they didn't know was that I had just received an email that would change everything, and my daughter had no idea what was coming next. Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful stories like this, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We post incredible true stories twice daily. And don't forget to like this video and comment below telling us what you think. Now, let's get into what happened. The day my daughter announced to the internet that the freeloader was finally gone was the same day I shut my trunk with my elbow and realized I wasn't shaking anymore. I had the last box balanced against my hip. My hands smelled like old cardboard and dust, the kind that sticks to your skin no matter how much you rub it off. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Not a call. Not a text. A notification. I knew it was her before I looked. I swear I did. The post was already there, bold and clean, like it had been waiting for me. Finally, the freeloader is gone. The photo showed the driveway behind her. My shadow caught in the corner, like proof. Over 1,000 people had liked it already. I scrolled. Cousins, old friends, a woman who once brought me soup when I had the flu. Someone joked about my age. Someone else dropped a laughing emoji, and nothing else. That felt worse. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I waited for the ache, the kind that makes your throat close. It didn't come. What came instead was a quiet, heavy calm. I tapped like on a few comments. Honestly, I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. Or the old reflex to keep the peace. Or maybe I wanted her to feel big for a minute. My name is Dorothy Hayes. I am 70 years old. I sat down in the driver's seat and shut the door. The radio hissed with static because I hadn't set a station yet. I didn't turn it off. I let it scrape the silence. I told myself to breathe. I told myself this was fine. Let her think this is over. Let her stand there with her phone and her audience and believe she'd won something. The engine stayed off. Cars passed. I watched the likes climb. I watched familiar names line up and choose a side without asking a single question. I tucked my phone face down in the cup holder and pressed my palms to the steering wheel until the smell of dust faded. When I finally started the car, I didn't look back. I drove with the calm of someone who had already decided not to explain herself anymore. By the time I pulled onto the highway, the story about me was already finished and neatly packaged. I could hear it in my head because I had helped write it. The useless old mom. The burden. The one who stayed too long and pretended not to notice. The woman everyone had to tiptoe around because she might fall apart if you said the wrong thing. Rachel had been repeating that version for years, and I had been nodding along like it was harmless. I told myself staying quiet was maturity. I told myself it was love. I told myself it was temporary. That part makes me wince now because silence doesn't stay neutral. It starts to sound like agreement. When Rachel walked past my room, her heels clicked sharp against the floor. Fast and deliberate, like punctuation. She never looked in, never slowed down. Once I said her name softly from behind the door. She didn't answer. Later at dinner, she said, "I didn't hear you," and kept eating. That was the rhythm. Me shrinking, her growing louder. At a family gathering, my cousin joked, "So, when are you finally getting your own place?" Rachel laughed first. "We're working on it," she said, like she was doing me a favor. I smiled because it felt easier than correcting her. I told myself it didn't matter how things sounded as long as we were still family. Another time, I offered to cover a bill that had come in late. Rachel said, "See, this is why people think you can't manage on your own." She said it casually, like a fact. I nodded. That nod cost me more than the money ever did. She liked being the hero, the patient daughter, the one carrying dead weight with grace. I let her have that role. I wore the other one because it kept the peace. When I finally parked at my friend's place, my phone buzzed again. Not with another notification. With a message I hadn't expected to see. A forwarded email preview. Clipped and careless. The subject line cut off mid-sentence. I stared at it longer than I should have, the calm from earlier tightening into something sharp and watchful. I didn't argue when I left because arguing would have given them time. The email came in by accident, forwarded to the wrong address. Rachel's name at the top. Her husband Steven's right below it. Both of them polite in that stiff way people get when they're asking for something ugly. The words jumped out fast. Capacity evaluation options if cooperation becomes difficult. I read it twice, then a third time slower, like the meaning might change if I was careful enough. It didn't. My stomach dropped in a clean, cold way. Not panic. Not yet. More like the floor disappearing an inch at a time. I scrolled. There were replies. Short ones. Yes, that's possible. We would need documentation. Timing matters. No one mentioned me by name after the first line. I was the parent. I was the subject. That was the moment I understood why Rachel had been so patient lately. Why she stopped snapping and started smiling. Why she said things like, "We just want to help you," with her hand already on my shoulder. Help didn't sound like help anymore. It sounded like a door closing quietly behind me. I walked into the kitchen, and she was there, scrolling on her phone. I said, "I saw the email." She didn't look up. She said, "Which one?" Stephen cleared his throat from the doorway and said, "We're just planning ahead." Planning for me without me? I told them I was going to stay with a friend for a bit. Rachel laughed, quick and sharp. "That's dramatic," she said. I nodded because pushing back would have made it worse. I packed what I could carry without making noise. Papers first. Medication next. Things that mattered but didn't look like they did. Leaving my own house felt wrong in a way that stuck to my ribs. I knew it would, but staying felt dangerous. By the time Rachel realized I was serious, my bag was already in the car. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching me like I was being difficult. I shut the door gently because slamming it would have turned this into something loud. And loud was exactly what they were ready for. Rachel had been calling it her house long before she posted it online. At parties, someone would ask about the neighborhood and she'd answer without missing a beat. "I love it here," she'd say. "We're thinking of opening up the kitchen." People would turn to her. Not to me. I stood there with a plastic cup in my hand, nodding like a guest who didn't want to overstay. I told myself it wasn't worth correcting. I told myself names didn't matter. They did. A neighbor once said, "You're lucky your daughter lets you stay." Rachel laughed. "She hates being alone," she said. I smiled because that was easier than saying anything else. Later, in the car, I stared at my hands until the feeling passed. I had learned how to swallow things quickly. When Rachel decided the living room needed a refresh, she didn't ask. She just did it. The smell of fresh paint filled the house. Sharp and chemical. The color, something bright. She liked it. "It lifts the space," she said. I said it looked nice. That was the role. Approve. Step back. Don't remind anyone you exist. Stephen talked about knocking down a wall. "It'll add value," he said like that settled it. Rachel nodded. Exactly. I was sitting right there. No one looked at me. I felt invisible in a way that made my jaw tighten. Once I tried. Just once. Someone asked whose idea the renovation was, and I said lightly, "We haven't checked the paperwork yet." Rachel's smile froze. She leaned in and said, quiet but firm, "Don't do that." Not, "Don't interrupt." Not, "Let's talk later." Don't do that. I went quiet again. That was my mistake. Because when you don't push back, people start to believe the story they're telling is true. They stop checking. They stop asking. They stop looking at documents. By the time I finally did, I realized how far things had shifted without anyone ever saying it out loud. I stopped pretending it was complicated because it wasn't. The taxes came first. The envelopes showed up in my name every year, and I paid them before Rachel could make a face about it. Insurance next. Same thing. Utilities after that. Electric, gas, water, all of it tied back to me. When something broke, it was my check that fixed it. Furnace one winter. Roof patch the next. I didn't announce any of it. I just handled it. Rachel still said it out loud. Freeloader. She said it like a joke at first, then like a fact. Once, when the power flickered, she said, "See, this place is falling apart," and looked at me like I was the reason. I said, "I'll take care of it." She said, "Of course you will," and smiled like she'd won something. Stephen would hand me receipts. "Can you cover this?" he'd say, already turning away. I'd nod. I hated that nod. I kept doing it anyway. There's a difference between being generous and being useful. And I wanted to be useful. That's the part that stings. I wanted them to need me. I wanted a role that kept me in the room. When Rachel posted that I was gone, the word hit different because I knew the math. I knew what stopped when I left. I knew what bills were about to land without my name attached. I knew how thin the margin really was. A few days later, a notice came through my email from utility company. Routine and bland. Account activity. Upcoming changes. I stared at it longer than I should have. I didn't forward it. I didn't mention it. I closed the screen and felt something settle in my chest. Steady and uncomfortable. That was when I understood the balance had already shifted. Not because I'd said anything, because I'd stopped. If you're still watching, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear the story. And comment below. We read every single one. Your support helps us bring you these powerful stories twice a day. Now, let's see what happened next. I hadn't looked at the trust paperwork in years, because I thought I understood it well enough. My parents, Helen and Robert, set it up back when my husband William was still alive. Back when planning ahead felt responsible instead of ominous. I remembered the basics. I remembered thinking it was boring and safe. I was wrong about the boring part. I opened the folder on my laptop in the small kitchen of the place I was staying. Rachel's post was still sitting at the top of my feed, frozen in time like a bruise you keep poking. I scrolled past it and pulled up the document. Page after page of language I'd skimmed once and never revisited. Until now. There it was. A clause I barely remembered reading. Clear. Specific. No softness to it at all. Protection against coercion. Protection against intimidation. Protection against public humiliation meant to pressure or control the owner. I felt my jaw tighten as I read it again, slower this time. The words didn't care how Rachel had meant it. They cared about what she'd done. My phone rang while I was still staring at the screen. Rachel. I let it go to voicemail. She texted instead. "You're being dramatic." Another text. "Take the post down." I didn't answer. A minute later, Stephen jumped in. "This is getting blown out of proportion." Blown out by who? Not me. Not yet. I sent one email. Just one. To the attorney listed at the bottom of the trust, Mr. Thompson. I attached the screenshot of the post. No commentary. No emotion. The reply came back faster than I expected. "This is relevant." That was it. That was enough. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was steady, like my feet had finally found the floor after drifting. Rachel had thought the post was a victory lap. She had handed me proof instead. When my phone buzzed again, I turned it face down and closed the laptop carefully, like I was done handling something sharp. I didn't respond. Not once. I left the post exactly where it was. I let the comments stack. I let the likes climb and then stall. I watched familiar names drift in and out of the thread like they were stopping by a show. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I didn't correct a single lie. Silence felt reckless at first, like stepping into traffic and trusting the cars to stop. By the third day, Rachel texted, "Can you please stop this?" I read it twice. She followed with, "People are asking questions." I put the phone down and made coffee. Stephen called that afternoon. I let it ring. He left a message that sounded careful. "Let's talk this through." Talk had never been their strong suit when it came to me. On the 5th day, I went to the post office. The clerk slid the envelope back to me and said, "Certified." I nodded. Boring. Necessary. I signed my name and watched her stamp the date like it mattered more than my feelings ever had. I mailed the notice without ceremony. No speech. No warning. That night, my phone wouldn't stop. It buzzed on the table like it was alive. 24 missed calls by midnight. Rachel. Steven. A number I didn't recognize that I knew belonged to someone who would say this was a misunderstanding. I turned the phone face down. The screen kept lighting up anyway, the glow bleeding around the edges. Halfway through the week, a thought slipped in and stayed there. Why does silence scare people more than yelling? I didn't chase it. I didn't need to. I slept through the night. A full night. No jolting awake. No rehearsing conversations that never went anywhere. When I woke up, the phone was still quiet for the first time in days. That quiet didn't feel like peace yet. It felt like pressure building somewhere I couldn't see. I didn't kick her out. That part mattered to me, even if she never believed it. We sat at the kitchen table because that's where she always felt in control. I slid the papers across to her without ceremony. She glanced at the first page and laughed. Not loud. Just a quick breath through her nose. This is a joke, she said. I shook my head once. Nothing else. It's a lease, I said. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. Month to month. Market rate. She flipped the page. Her smile thinned. You can't be serious. I told her I was. I told her utilities would be transferred into her name by the deadline printed at the top. Electric, gas, water, internet, all of it. I pointed to the date. Clear. Clean. No wiggle room. Her fingers started tapping the table. Fast. Too fast. She said, So you're punishing me now? I said, I'm setting terms. She leaned back and crossed her arms like she always did when she wanted to win by waiting me out. It didn't work this time. You're my mother, she said, like that should settle it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue the point. I said, You're an adult living in my property. That was the first time I saw it land. The tapping stopped. Her eyes dropped back to the page where her name sat under the word tenant. She tried again. People will think you're cruel. I said, People already think what they think. She opened her mouth, closed it, then laughed again. Softer this time. You won't go through with this. I told her I already had. She stared at the signature line like it might move if she waited long enough. The room felt tight. Not loud. Heavy with things we hadn't said out loud in years. I stayed still. I didn't explain myself. I didn't soften it. When she finally reached for the pen, her hand shook just enough to notice. Rachel signed. Not right away. She sat there longer than she needed to, staring at the page like it had insulted her personally. The word tenant sat in black ink above her name. Clean. Unemotional. She picked up the pen, set it down, then picked it up again. You're actually serious, she said. Not angry. Not loud. Flat. Yes, I said. Just that. Her mouth tightened. She signed once, too fast, then paused and added the date like it might change something. When she slid the papers back to me, she didn't look up. That was new. Rachel always looked people in the eye when she thought she had the upper hand. Steven cleared his throat from the doorway. This doesn't have to be like this, he said. I didn't respond. Rachel waved him off without turning around. It's done, she said. The way she said it sounded like she was talking to herself. I gathered the pages and tapped them into a neat stack. My hands felt heavy, like they'd been holding something for a long time and just put it down. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel relieved. I felt tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. She finally looked up then. Quick, like she expected to catch something on my face. I gave her nothing. She pushed her chair back and stood too fast. I hope you're happy, she said. I didn't answer. Happiness wasn't the point, and she knew it. Halfway to the hallway, she stopped. You really would have kicked me out, she said, still not facing me. I said, I gave you a choice. That was all. She walked away without another word. I sat there a moment longer, listening to her steps fade. The sounds are sharper now that the house wasn't pretending to belong to her anymore. Rachel works overtime now. I see it in the timestamps on the transfers. Rent every month. On time. No notes. No jokes. Just the amount we agreed to. Exactly as written. When it hits my account, I don't feel anything dramatic. I mark it paid, and move on. I don't live in that house anymore. I bought a small studio near a park, quiet enough that my thoughts don't echo back at me. The first night there, I slept straight through. No alarms in my chest. No rehearsing conversations. Just sleep. I used the rent money in ways that still surprise me. A short trip I never took when I was younger. A donation that felt right and didn't need an explanation. A few selfish things too. I don't apologize to myself for those anymore. Rachel keeps her distance. When we talk, it's clipped and careful. Businesslike. She avoids my eyes the way she used to avoid my room. That hurts, but it's cleaner than what we had before. I don't reach for her. I don't chase closure. I let the silence be what it is. Some days, I miss the daughter I thought I had. The one I defended when I shouldn't have. Other days I wake up steady and realize how much smaller I had made myself to keep a fragile peace intact. Here's what I learned. Silence can become a habit that costs you more than speaking ever would. Respect doesn't return on its own. It shows up when you stop shrinking. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. Sharing it out loud took more out of me than I expected. If you've lived something similar, you're welcome to leave your thoughts below. And if these stories resonate with you, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. We share powerful, real-life stories like this twice every single day. Hit the like button if this story moved you, and comment below telling us what lesson you took away from Dorothy's journey. We read every comment, and your story matters too. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember, you deserve respect, even from the people you love most.